and welcome to The Black Unconscious,
a mental health podcast about living, coping, and thriving while Black.
I'm Raquel Martin, a PhD candidate in medical and clinical psychology.
And I'm Dr. Justin Hopkins, a licensed clinical psychologist.
This podcast is not meant to be a substitute for a therapeutic relationship with a licensed therapist.
Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy the show. Hey, and welcome to The Black Unconscious. We are your hosts. I am Dr. Justin Hopkins.
And I am Raquel Martin.
And welcome to Season 2, Episode 1. The title of today's episode is What is Freedom? Blackness Policed.
Yeah, so the first thing we're going to start talking about is just basically the connection between mental health and the whole aspect of like autonomy and freedom as a whole.
Right. So that connection, right? Mental health and freedom, right? The idea, those two concepts, just off the bat, one of the things that we know is that Blackness makes white America uncomfortable. And, you know, for us, we want to talk about the conscious and unconscious aspects of mental health. And because white America is typically uncomfortable with certain expressions of Blackness, there are micro messages that we receive on a daily basis about who we can or cannot be in certain spaces. And those messages get communicated in ways that affect us. They affect us in ways that we are aware of and also ways that we are not aware of. And we kind of want to break that down. So because we receive these kind of messages, our psyche, who we are, how we feel about ourselves, our concept of self, in part develops in response to white America's comfort zone. And essentially, we know that while America is called the land of the free, as a Black person, it's a weird experience living in this country that was built on liberty, justice, and freedom for all. This idea of equality and knowing that the majority experiences that level of freedom, we as Black people do not. And it's not fully acknowledged that freedom, that we don't have access to that freedom. And so it's like this constant experience of being kind of gaslighted.
So I always think of it from an aspect of like when I have issues with like the law or something, not with myself, but the way things play out. I'm like, well, I always think like, what do I expect when it was never meant to protect me? Like we talked about, like, what is it? The Constitution. The Constitution wasn't meant to protect us as a people. We weren't even considered people when it came out. Yeah. So it's ridiculous. I'm so detached that it's just like, it's not surprising to me. Like why? It's like, oh, I can't believe the system failed. The system's not even for us.
Right.
I can believe it fails.
Right.
Just, that's the way it's set up.
Right. So it's a common belief actually that the system is doing exactly what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I feel like the system's doing what it was set up to do for who it was set up for.
Right. So from slavery to Jim Crow to the civil rights movement to mass incarceration, institutionalized racism has pretty much just evolved and has found new ways to police Black people and to keep Black people in their place. So when we talk about our own mental health, again, there are barriers to us being authentically ourselves, to living a life that feels just and fulfilling and essentially free, and all of the entitlements and privileges that the majority culture gets to experience are things that we don't get to experience in the same fashion. And that shapes us. It shapes the way that we live our lives, the way that we relate to ourselves, the way that we think about our sense of efficacy and ability, the way that we aspire, and whether we feel like it's okay to desire certain things or not. Essentially, how we move through the world, in many ways, again, is in part shaped by white America's comfort with us in certain spaces. And so this idea of freedom actually doesn't apply to us. And I think that is a novel idea to so many people that don't live the Black experience. But we experience it every single day.
Yeah, I think I've had a lot of conversations with my younger brother because he is 14. I love him to death. A lot of time he has no sense. So he does this thing where he locks himself out or forgets his keys all the time. And I'm like, no matter what, do not climb in the house. Like, no matter what you do, just don't climb in the house. I talked to him about this multiple times. What does he do? He climbs in the house. Now, luckily, we only live like a block from the police department. So my concern is like, what would your concern be if you like see a Black child climbing in a house? What do you think is going to happen?
Honestly, my mind automatically goes to he could die. He could die,
right? And he doesn't see it as a big deal because, he's a kid. So kids get to just make mistakes. But to me, the amount of mistakes that children are allowed to make decrease significantly if you are a minority child.
Absolutely.
So to us, he is a child. But to some police officer, this could be a grown man climbing into a window. It doesn't matter like his age, because I actually don't think that certain groups see minority children as children anyway. I think they just see them as, I don't know, little felons or something in the making. So I like to have that conversation with him. It's like, what do? Do you constantly talk to your children, and you don't want to instill too much in fear in them because you still want them to be a child, you still want them to be free, but you also have to let them understand and acknowledge that like free for you is different than free for your counterpart or your peer. You're not the same person. You're not going to be seen the same way, and you have to be mindful of that. And it just sucks because I think a lot of children have to grow up way quicker.
Yeah,
like I think there's a lot of people who like you're like, oh, I don't want to. Take my, it's like always like almost like the whole Santa Claus thing. It's like, when do you tell your kids, most people don't tell their kids there's no Santa Claus because they like the fantasy of it. And it's like, yeah, I mean, we can't talk about Santa Claus. When we going to start mentioning the fact that he Black though? I mean, like Santa Claus is one thing. Let's keep this as long as we can, because sooner or later, he or she is going to realize they're Black. So
yeah, right. Black kids have to grow up so much faster, right? And there's such an innocence and a playfulness and youthfulness to like a freedom to being a child, right? But that's not the case for Black kids, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's the same at all.
We know that Black kids are more likely to be tried as adults for when they enter the criminal justice system. We know that in general, right, Black bodies are experienced as or fear-inducing stimuli to our white counterparts, right? We know that Black boys are more likely to be suspended, expelled, or
placed in special education.
Right. There's when it comes to Blackness, any particular quality that you might possess is experienced. In particular, like negative qualities, because we all have negative qualities. But as a Black person, if you have a negative quality, it is amplified 100 times over, and you're judged solely off of that. And so one of the things, Mahershala Ali and that
Mahershala. Don't talk about a man like that. That's not how you say his name.
Wait, what's his name?
I thought it was Mahershala. Is that wrong? Darn it.
I have
my
no
husband's
idea.
Name wrong.
What is his name? Yeah, you're actually right.
Because that's my man.
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, you think you met my husband, but you met my side piece.
So, Mahershala Ali. Mahershala Ali and the documentary, I think it's called, like, what is it? Footnotes, the Footnotes documentary for the 444 album by Jay-Z. Like, he says, one of the things that I really like that he says, he puts it so plainly. He says, Black people, Black men in particular, walk through the world playing defense. We walk through the world playing defense. Other people get to play offense, defense, special teams, like whatever side of whatever sport analogy you want to go with, whatever side of the ball you want to play, you have choice in how you can approach life. For Black folks, we always have to we have to walk through life with our guard up, knowing that there's a strong likelihood that there will be people that are going to tell us we make them feel uncomfortable, that we intimidate them, or that something about us is not received well. And we don't always get told that directly. We get told that indirectly as well. For example, in certain in certain like higher paying jobs, right? Like there are like there are stricter dress codes. For example, the Yankees still have really strict dress codes for
Really?
facial.
Like what?
Yeah, they do. They have very conservative guidelines for like facial hair, for their attire. I mean, it is like pretty archaic actually. But in general, these like Fortune 500 companies, right? There's a certain ethos, there's a certain culture and milieu there that basically says like, listen, if you want to be this successful, you have to be whiter. You have to be this way. You have to be that way. You have to strip certain parts away from yourself in order to fit in here. And the message is, this is what success looks like. Your Black self, the way that you carry yourself, the way that your hair naturally looks, for women, whether it's natural hair or dreadlocks, or for men, whether it's dreadlocks or their like natural curly or bigger froze. Like I think in general we're in this like natural hair like revolution, and where people are where we see like Black millennials and young adults are really like embracing their natural hair, but there are still so many spaces professionally where people look at you a certain way, where there's a general discomfort and a distance, where you're not going to get invited to the professor's house because you're not going to have that kind of connection because you're not as well received just because of the way your natural hair looks on your head. The micro messages there are that you can't be your natural self. You can't be Black. Your Blackness is not good enough. You have to be something different. And it does shape us. It does shape us in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I also think another thing that's like policed with individuals, and I think particularly with men, Black men, are like display rules, like the way that you express emotions. Basically within them, it's like, okay, so it's just display rules are basically the learned ways of expressing emotions. And the reason why I look up a lot of stuff with display rules is because I look at health disparities, like minority health disparities, specifically with children and adolescents, because I do a bunch of assessments. And I notice that, I go into a school and like there's so many like ADHD diagnoses, or so many like, I don't know, not learning disorder, but like conduct disorder diagnosis, behavioral disorders, and not as many diagnoses of anxiety and depression or trauma, which is like, from my experience, that's what they're suffering from, right? So in my research, I look not only in the disparities, but like the root of the disparities. It's not enough just to say like, all right, so Black people just get treated differently and they're just not diagnosed right. Because you have to ask why, right? So one of the things are display rules. It's like there was this study on African-American mothers, and it was how they allowed their children, their comfort level with their children expressing their emotions. So clinically significant, of course, that they didn't want their male or female children expressing too much emotion in public, but it was more so for the Black men, like the sons. And when they were asked why they felt that they were uncomfortable with their sons expressing emotion, they said it was because they think that they will be perceived as dangerous. So this is only like negative emotions. This is like, of course, anger, but it's also sadness or despair or anxiety. And the reason that this contributes to minority health disparities, and the reason why this contributes to us not getting the appropriate care with lack of cultural competence, is because if you are stating that you're pissed off and you don't have the words to express your emotion because you have never been shown how to express your emotion, or you feel uncomfortable expressing your emotion, you're going to get the wrong diagnosis, which means you might get the wrong treatment, which means you feel like the person is not going to understand you, and then you're not coming back because they don't get it. Like they don't get what's wrong with you. And this is like something that has to be understood in a cultural competence lens, because your emotions are so policed, like as a minority, as a Black man, as a Black woman, because you're taught that it is not appropriate to express negative emotions in public, or it could be dangerous for you to express anger in public because someone may see you as a threat. Then when it's time to finally address like what's been going on with you, you don't know how to do it, and you may get the wrong treatment from a clinician that's not culturally competent or who doesn't know about like the roots of like what comes down to it. So that's a whole other way that things are policed within the Black community, and absolutely, the minority community. The way you're allowed to display your emotion. Right.
So there's You have to color inside really, really, really rigid lines, like really close lines. And you have to be careful that at any point someone could tighten those lines and tell you need to be a little bit more this or a little bit more that, whether that's through a passive-aggressive email or a side-eye from a coworker or superior.
Or the intimidated thing. I told you today I got told I'm intimidating, which I'm used to at this point. But
and I loved your answer.
But when she said, well, how do you feel about that? And I was like, well, it's hard. I was like, when you're the only person who looks like you as a Black female in like my PhD program, where there are fewer of us, I feel as though I need to speak up in order to speak out for how I feel or for my rights when it comes down to things, because there's no one else who's going to speak out for it but me.
Right.
Period.
Right.
Like, it's not, it's just annoying because I think so with that, it's more so me speaking out more. But I'll be speaking out about stuff that my counterparts will also be complaining about. But it's like they just don't want to rock the boat. But it's also, to me, like, well, I'm not going to sit here and be uncomfortable. Right. Like, I'm uncomfortable in my, a lot of people are uncomfortable in their skin, but I'm not supposed to speak up for, like, me as a clinician. And we sitting here trying to teach kids to speak up for themselves. Like, how is that a good example?
Right. One of the most insidious things about racism is how like white people's comfort is privileged over every single thing else. In this day and age, white people use police as their personal customer service rep for their own discomfort.
Yeah,
literally, a white person's discomfort can get you killed.
Yep.
Think about that. Like, think about the level of influence that has on the lives of Black folks. When literally a white person's discomfort can result in your death by them calling the police. I mean, earlier this week, I don't know if you saw this, Raquel, but it went viral. There was a white woman preventing a young Black man from entering his apartment in a luxury apartment building.
I think her name is Condo Kathy now, though.
Condo Kathy?
It's
yeah.
Condo something.
Yeah. Right. Like, it's almost like we were preemptively like naming these folks just so, because we just know, like, if you walk through the world playing defense because you have situations like this where Condo Kathy is like preventing you from entering your own apartment, like, you just kind of, those kind of like pseudonyms like just come at the ready. But here's this Black man couldn't get into his apartment because this white woman wouldn't let him in, and she demanded that he present his key fob, that he prove where he lived, that he tell her like what apartment he was staying in.
Trash. And
he was just like, I'm not having this. I live here. You're stopping me from getting in. He then got by her. Right, got in the elevator, and he's just like, "Listen, you do what you got to do, but I'm going home."
Kept his composure, even though he's the one who's basically being attacked, but kept his composure because he know darn well if he says something crazy, that's it.
She gets into the elevator, and she's just like, "Who invited you here?" She still can't. She cannot fathom that this man lives in her building, and then she follows him to his door.
Which let me tell you something. Like, if the tables had been turned, and a man had followed a woman to her door, like, can you, dude?
A Black man following a white woman to the door,
like, it will get you. I mean, that's it. Like, that'll
get you a stalking charge easily.
Yeah, it will.
Yeah.
And I don't know if she's been charged yet. Someone needs to look into that.
She did get fired.
Okay, well, I need more.
But you know her explanation for why she did what she did? Because she was uncomfortable. Think about that. Like, she stopped him from entering. She stopped him from entering the building, then followed him to his door. And even when he put his key in the door, then she tried to like change the story and say like, well, like, I just want you to know, like, I was trying to say hi and I just wanted to, and he's just like, girl, what are you doing? And she was the one who said that she was uncomfortable. And I think it's one of the most like dangerous things about racism is just how the comfort of white folks is prioritized over all else. And so when when some white folks feel uncomfortable, and they can't even, no one wants to be labeled a racist, so they can't directly tie it to like racism or the fact that a Black body is in their space. Instead, what do? They call their personal customer service rep, aka the police, and get them to handle that to make them feel a little bit more comfortable.
They need to start finding people or something. Like, you got to hit them where they hurt. That's why I love when they lose their jobs. I'm like, now you care, don't you? Now you got to work on that, don't you? Because you ain't got no job, Tommy. And that's what happens when you act this way. Like, come on.
Right. Another thing for us is like, I wanted to kind of get into this concept of free speech. And the First Amendment that allows us to speak freely our opinions. Now, granted, right, here's something that I don't think everyone always gets. Like, you have the right to say whatever you want, right? People also have the right to not
punch
like
you
it.
in your face because of it.
Right?
Like,
They do.
You can say what you want. You might have to catch these hands afterwards, right. But I hope it really felt good to say that.
Right. But there's something about, like, when I think for Black people, when we say ouch, when we say something hurts, when we say, like, there are these things that are going on that are not right, not only are we pathologized for feeling and expressing and acknowledging our pain or trying to address our pain, whether it be via protest, whether it be via speaking out, whatever the case may be, we're ostracized for it. And even the people who support those on the front lines doing it are ostracized for it. And there's such, like, vehement backlash.
Vehement.
Like,
first one of the season, ladies and gentlemen. First one of the season. There you go.
Are you going to keep a running catalog of my big words?
I might have to. I don't even I don't even have to. My mom does it. You'll say a word, she'll like, that's so Justin. I'm like, what are you talking about? You don't even know him. What?
But is this? I'm going to use another V word. There's
Very?
This vitriol, right?
Oh my damn.
There's like this. There's such like hateful. There's just such hateful, like, backlash to any time a Black person says, like, hey, there are things that are unjust that are happening to us, right? Perfect example, Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reed. Like, I think we should mention both of them in the same way. You know,
yeah, I agree.
He kneels. Nike supports him. You have, like, grown white people in power that are speaking out against Nike for supporting Colin Kaepernick for defending the fact that Black lives are antagonized. You know, like, so it's not only that they
murdered, like, antagonized and murdered, like,
right.
Murder,
right? And so it's not only, like, hate against Colin for what he's doing; it's hate for anyone that remotely tolerates the message that Black people experience things that are unjust. So this idea of, like, freedom of speech, like, everyone has the right to respond to things that in the way that they want to after you have spoken freely. But is it really free? Like, is it really free speech when, for example, you lose your job for speaking about something that hurts you? This is, and sometimes people, like, falsely make the comparison to, like, this versus hate speech. Colin Kaepernick isn't doing hate speech. Hate speech is actually dangerous and gets people killed.
And he wasn't even doing speech, dude. Like, oh my God. Like, he wasn't even doing speech. He was, you know, if we're supposed to be doing nonviolent protests, and then that's the issue. And then we do protests, and then that's the issue. It's like, oh, okay. So just say you want us to shut up. Just say that. Yeah. Like, don't say, like, oh, it's not what you did. It's about how you did it. No, it's not. You just missed the days when we, you know, just knew our place. That's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, man, I missed the day when those when they just knew their place and we didn't give them books. This is all our faults. Like, we brought them here. How dare they turn against us? And it's like, what? Like, the biggest issue is you have a problem with the fact that we know words and we use the words to try to get, I don't know what we should be owed, but you don't really think no one thinks they owe us anything. And I think as a people, we don't really think we are owed anything. I think we've earned, like, things, like the same way if we hear comments like, go back to Africa, our blood, sweat, tears, our ancestors are in this soil more than yours are, honestly, like, to be real. So like, and then the riches and all that stuff, that's built off the back of our ancestors. I just have this theory that I would love to do a book, like, you trace back every single million, billion, all that, somehow it's one of our ancestors that worked in the field of the crops to make it happen. Like,
I believe, like, we can all, like, share the country. Like, we're, you know, I'm like,
I don't want to, but yeah, all right.
But, like, I feel like we can all, like, share the country, like, I do, and we can all, like, have a space in this country that feels comfortable and have, like, a right to pursue happiness, a right to pursue a lifestyle that is safe and comfortable and includes the things that that you would like to have in it within meaning, like
if
or
you're
within
pleasant.
reason,
If you're
within reason,
pleasant.
yeah, within reason.
But
right?
the racists, we should find a way to get them out. Like it's always like, I feel like it's always, I don't want any misconception. Like, we're talking about racist people. So if you're not racist, that's not an issue. But all the racists, we should have like some kind of test, not like a regular like check mark test, like, something. And then if they don't pass, they get shot off in a cannon. Mm-hmm. But the cannon goes to a different kind. I'm so serious. I think you're laughing because you think I'm just very serious. Like, I feel like...
Raquel, you want to create a cannon that selects white people to shoot out of the country?
Well, no, not white people. I'm being very specific in the usage of my words. Racist. And not just racist white people, because, I mean, there are other racist people either. Little known fact, because I also do research on implicit bias. Did you know that when we give implicit bias to, like, all races... Asian Americans actually have a greater, if not the equal bias against African Americans as white Americans. Mm-hmm. So
you're speaking of just like racist in general.
Yeah, implicit bias, which is what we would attribute to microaggressions. Let's think of it that way. And there's this test that looks at your implicit biases, and they've done like thousands upon hundreds of thousands of people. And the test, because it's a free test to take, and they show that they looked at it across races. And Asian Americans or Asian individuals who take the test have the same, if not greater bias, implicit bias against African Americans than white people.
Wow. So it's not...
I know so many, you never really realize what you know.
Until you have a podcast.
I do a lot of research.
And then you're like, oh my goodness.
I do research on minority health disparities and display rules. Also, I look at implicit bias.
Yes.
As a contributor to minority health disparities. Health disparities is my thing.
And we also, in our spare time, listen to Nuck If You Buck and do
that's my shit.
I just feel like
and bucket and ready to fight. That's what I'm dancing like right now.
But I think again, right? Like you can be educated, you can have your degrees, you can do a ton of research, and you can also do things that are a part of mainstream Black culture. But I think the society we live in would have you believe like, no, you can't be both of those things. Or no, you can't speak out about these particular things. Actually, no, you need to pigeonhole yourself into this particular box. You need to be this kind of person, this kind of shape, look this kind of complexion in order to be respected and appreciated in these kind of ways.
Yeah, I have nightmares about the day that somehow Back That Ass Up comes up on a radio station at my job. I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I think I might lose my job because it's just an automatic reaction to be like, and just, and it's just nightmares. Literal nightmares about if that song ever comes on.
Just won't be able to control yourself.
I won't be able to control myself and I'm going to lose my job. It's the same reason. I'm going to be real with you. And this sounds mad racist. I do not eat fried chicken at work.
Yeah.
We have fried chicken. When we have fried chicken at home, like I can't bring it for leftovers. Because I can't do that.
I also like do not eat watermelon at like white cookouts.
Any event. And I walk past it.
Right.
No.
Because there's stereotype threat, right? Then you're just like
delicious, it's hydrating.
Everybody likes fried chicken and watermelon. Everybody does, right?
Fried chicken is amazing. It's just like the lady today she asked me she was just astounded by the fact that I wore a bonnet at night, and she was just like she said, like, your husband lets you wear a bonnet? I said, first of all, every Black man or any man who's been with I'm like, well, they wear bonnets at night. She said, I think you're generalizing. And I said, I think I know more about this subject. She's a white lady. She's awesome. But I was like, I'm pretty sure I know more about this than you. I was like, my goddaughter has a bonnet. She got a little pink bonnet. She's 5. She's had it for years. She's 4. She's had it for years. Like, and I was like, I don't want to speak out too strongly about this because I don't want them to realize that I'm actually Black, but I don't think that the bonnet is like a big thing. It's like certain topics I try to stay away from. When people are like Kavanaugh, they're like, can you believe it? I said, I can. Right. Y'all surprised? Oh, right. This is the first time y'all had your heart broke over the justice system. Right. Damn.
Right.
It's hard.
To like draw some parallels, right? To like the Kavanaugh thing, right? Like I think he feels a couple things, right? Not to get too far off course. I think there's a strong possibility that that Dr. Ford and Judge Kavanaugh are both telling the truth. And I know this is cynical.
My mother.
Listen to me.
We might have to pause.
Well, not exactly. No. You're like, when you hear what I have to say.
I know. You're not like a misogynist butthead. I'm just playing. Okay, finish what you're saying.
Okay, so
most of the time,
I think I actually truly believe that it's possible that Kavanaugh really did not recall the worst moment in Dr. Ford's life, because to him it was just Tuesday.
Yeah, I get that.
And I think, like, similarly, and not to completely, because I really don't like getting into like struggle Olympics or comparing like injustices, because
nobody wins. Nobody wins. Like, it's like, and people always try to do that. There's
injustice, is injustice, right? But I think that, right, for some people in power and for some people who possess such a mass amount of privilege, the idea that you would want something different from what they desire, or that you would have an experience far different from theirs, right? That is the veil of sexism and racism, that what you experience can't possibly be true because I did not experience it. And so for the Kavanaughs of the world and the Trumps of the world and the other racist, sexist, homophobic, oppressive people of the world, the idea of black pain is actually so threatening to their worldview. The idea of like white people suffering at the hands of men on such a regular basis is so strange to them because they're not personally experiencing it, that they just deny it flat out. And I know this sounds like cynical to think that, well, they're both telling the truth, because like someone like Kavanaugh like wouldn't care, or it wouldn't be remarkable for him to have sexually assaulted somebody because it was so normal. I think it is true, and I do think there's a parallel to for some white people who also happen to be racist, that it's so shocking the level of confinement that black people feel in white spaces, how far we feel from this idea of freedom, how we feel so alienated by the term and dismissed by the term. It's so shocking to some people that that term just doesn't apply to us whatsoever, that it's denied. And it's not, and they pretend like it can't possibly be the case. And so I think like being black in America is kind of like this experience of constantly being told that we are the land of the free, we are the best country, while also like oppressing us.
And also saying, not you though. Be like, you, this is all for you. But you, Tyrone, I'm not talking to you. Okay? This isn't, I'm not going to overtly say that, but I'm going to just put everything in front of you so you just kind of get the hint, and then you just stop trying to move out of your box. I'm going to put systemic racism. I'm going to put you in this special education class. I'm going to give you the wrong assessment. I'm not going to give you access to mental health. And I'm going to say, like, give you, like, ridiculously negative words and say, like, you're on welfare and also this stuff, and try to use words to describe you, even though we're not the greatest population on welfare. And then when you finally do well at something, I'm going to say it's because I gave you the hand up anyway. I'm going to say it's because of affirmative action. I'm going to do all this. And then eventually you're just going to stop trying because, right. But it's the land of the free.
Yeah. And land of the free, land of opportunity.
I'm going to just put all these things in a way for you to just think, like, it's not me. Like, I gave y'all all the same opportunities. It's like, I gave y'all all the same things. You guys aren't starting on the same footing, but
right.
That's not my fault. Don't blame me for my ancestor stuff. And it's like, we're not blaming you for your ancestor stuff. We're asking you to dismantle the stuff that they put in place.
Right.
That's it. That's not bad.
I think one of the worst possible things about like trauma and oppression is that there isn't just the initial trauma and affliction. Then there's denial that it ever happens. So freedoms are stripped from black people every day on a large scale and on a small scale, right? There's mass incarceration and second-class citizenship, right, the war on drugs that does continue and does disproportionately imprison black men for nonviolent drug possession. And so
when you can get an indica or a sativa via an app these days, and they're making millions and billions off of it, but people are still in jail for like a dime bag. But okay.
But then on these on these other subtle levels, you have these experiences like where recently a white woman called the cops on a man for talking to his son during a baseball game. And the white woman thought that this black father was talking to the umpire, and he said, "No, I'm talking to my son." The woman continued to confront him and try to tell him to continue to basically try to police him. And he pretty much just said, I'm not speaking to you. I'm not interested in you at all. Like, I don't know why you keep coming up to me. Mm-hmm. She didn't call the cops. And so, like, even it's like this expectation that black folks constantly be gracious and mindful, again, of the comfort of white folks around us. And the moment that you make white folks a little bit uncomfortable, then there's a risk of death. There's a risk of of the cops being called on you. There's a risk of you being assaulted or brutalized. There's literally your safety as a human is then put in jeopardy.
And it's not just adults. What was the child? What was the little boy?
Yes, the little boy in the bodega who the white woman accused him of sexually assaulting her, and he was a 9-year-old boy or a 12-year-old. It was
because they don't see us. They don't see them as children. Period.
Right, and she called the police. And
traumatized this boy.
Traumatized the boy. Also, the video showed that he did not grab her at all. Like, his book bag brushed up against her, but she was really she was hell bent on calling the cops. And it's hard not to hear the story of Emmett Till in that, who actually did die from a white woman who claimed that he had whistled at her. And years later, now I think this year, that same white woman said that actually she falsified that story. Now,
and I don't know why she's not in jail. I still legit don't understand why she's not in jail. And I think someone said something about the person being older. Bill Cosby's going to jail, dog, and ain't nobody complaining about that. So age does not. It has nothing to do with it. I'm just saying, because I distinctly remember seeing a blog mention this. So I just want to just in case any blog reads this, it's like, okay, all right, no, that's not a thing. No one has a problem with Bill Cosby going to jail because of his age. Because if you do something, you do something. So she should be in jail.
I think so
because the person is dead.
Right.
A child.
And she lied, and she falsified the story.
And she lied. Look at I will never.
Yeah. So in general, to summarize, right? Like, black bodies are police. Freedom of speech is only free as long as you are not advocating for black lives. Because if you do, then you could lose your job, or you could be ostracized from your career, or you could receive a whole bunch of death threats or just hateful and aggressive messages from your surrounding community. There are groups being labeled black identity extremists.
Black Lives Matter was on that list. I remember seeing that in one of the it was one of these court cases. It wasn't a court case, but she was speaking. It was a black woman. She's speaking about the fact that they were on a watch list or something like that. And she was asking why they were on the watch list, but the KKK wasn't. And I watched so much stuff I cannot remember when I saw it, but It was this year.
Right. And people, and you hear these comparisons drawn between like Black Lives Matter and the KKK, and it's just so infuriating. Like, KKK is a hate group that killed black people and destroyed black communities, literally.
Raped, pillaged, murdered.
Yeah. And that's being compared to a group that tries to increase the visibility of black humanity.
And just wants you to stop killing us. And just saying that we matter too.
Yeah, right. So the same level of violence and aggression that is expressed by the KKK is equated to, in the eye of America, is equated to simply trying to defend oneself as a black person.
Yeah, that's messed up.
It's experienced in the same way, literally experienced in the same way. And so black people saying, ouch, black pain, I think is so, it's experienced as so threatening to our surrounding society. And so it really makes you want to ask, what the heck is freedom? I can't even advocate for myself to be treated like a human. What is that? Now I'm on, there are reports of some people who I've even thought like maybe I was on one of those lists, because I often on my own my private social media pages, I post a lot of articles about social justice issues. I mean, and it spans the gamut. It includes the rights of Muslims, the rights of immigrants, the rights of women, the rights of trans folks, the rights of gay folks, the rights of Black folks, of course, the rights of everybody.
Civil rights. It's
right?
just civil
it's just
rights.
Civil rights.
And I feel like I get that, because you see my desk. My desk is all like just blackety black.
Yeah.
Everything. I got like a black samurai. I got a black powder puff girl. I got Zora Hurston and Asasa Shakur talking about the patriarchy and racism right there.
Yeah, but I've literally wondered, like, just because like I have some of those things, like if I'm on some list somewhere,
you're on the list.
Somebody's desk.
I saw you there.
Have you seen the list, Raquel? Can you like share that with us?
Yeah, you're on the list.
Yeah.
I added you, but it's good to be on this list. It means that you're one of us.
It also means that the federal government
perceives
you as a threat.
Can we just LOLs? You know, some people call LOL lols. I learned that this year. Okay, I'm sorry. You're right. I have to be serious. Y'all can see the look I just got. Like, stay on freaking task. I'm making a serious point. Sorry. Okay. I'm sorry, Dr.
Does
Hopkins.
It not suck?
Please continue what you're saying.
I mean, that sucks. Like to be like just to say like, hey, like there's some things that are happening that are like in my life that are really like alarming to me. Like that gets me on like a watch. Like the concept of that like.
Blows your mind.
It just blows my mind. Being told that you live in a world that is free with unlimited opportunities, and then to even acknowledge your own pain and strife is viewed as so threatening and so violent, and that they try to squash it at any chance that you can. That's not freedom. That's not autonomy. That's not living life as a civilian with equal rights, and that's a problem. So and it shapes the way that we how we develop.
So what do you do after this like ridiculously depressing ish? What do? You rage against the machine. Seriously though, I actually have this theory that a lot of times there's like the whole angry Black woman or angry Black man. One, we got a lot to be angry about, but it's the fact that you don't have an outlet for it. How do you like make a change?
Yeah.
Like, what do you decide to do that actually like makes you feel like you're making a change? I feel like a lot of stressors from us as a community comes from the fact that we feel like things are so awful and we're trying and we have no outlet for stuff. So find a way to do stuff. It doesn't have to be like, it can be driving someone to the polls. It can be just finding a group where you're able to like, I don't know, talk about these things. It could be educating about yourself so you actually know what you're talking about when you're on your Twitter wars or Instagram wars. It could be just, there's so many ways to contribute to the Black community. I feel like you can't really have, I don't feel that I don't think I could ever have self-actualization if I wasn't contributing to my community in some way. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that's the goal. And I think a lot of times when we're feeling stressed or stuff like that and you're feeling disheartened and stuff, it's because you don't have an outlet for the anger that you're experiencing and you're not really contributing to your community. I feel like if you feel like you're doing something good, then you're able to be more happy about life.
Yeah, I think too, right? Like as therapists, we work with people that are being impacted by factors that they cannot change all the time. Yeah. Like, for example, like working with children who come from really, really emotionally troubling households, right? You cannot necessarily change the aspect of their household or the people that are creating that environment, but you can work with the child to deal with it. But they still have to interact with these factors that are not changing. So too are Black people living in a world with rules that are set up against them, right? That we have been fighting to change since we got here. Like 400 plus years of us fighting for things to change. And there has been incremental change, obviously, but we still have a long way to go, but there are things that change very slowly, and there are freedoms or liberties that you and I, Raquel, are never going to see in our lifetime. So what do you do with that, right? How do you live within these rules, the screwed up system, and these things that confine us? How do you? I think it is a lot of like what you're saying, like finding outlets for yourself, focusing on the things that you can control. Lamenting about the things that you can't, knowing that your limitations are actually valid and they matter despite what anyone says. Black Lives Matter is not a Black identity extremist group. It's not a terrorist group.
Imagine when you're saying just don't kill me and that makes you a
yes,
terrorist.
Exactly.
How ridiculous. Like, it's so stupid.
Just don't, can you please value my life?
Can
like,
you
not
please
kill
just
me?
stop killing me?
And it's like,
no, you terrorist. What?
You're like a domestic terrorist. Yeah, right.
It's just crazy.
So,
it's the dumbest thing ever, man.
So I think we have to know within ourselves. Like one of the things I get frustrated with when people say like we have to pick our battles, and I'm like, actually no. Like I don't agree with that. Why pick our battles? And usually the logic is, so maybe someone may have a different logic, but usually the logic is, well, when we fight, we need to make sure that we're coming with a legitimate fight so that we're not delegitimized. First of all, it's not my job to prove to you that I'm in pain. I'm in pain because I'm saying that I'm in pain, and that's enough.
And emotions are right or wrong; they just are. So if you feel in pain, you're in pain.
So I'm not going to pick a battle just so that I can earn your respect for what I'm telling you I'm feeling. I don't have to prove to you that I'm experiencing this. I'm experiencing this because I said I'm experiencing. So I don't have to pick my battle for your comfort or to earn your trust and belief in what I'm fighting against. So I don't believe in that either. I think we have a serious gripe. I think we have.
I don't have to. I'm making you joke.
You would definitely make me joke. But I don't believe in this idea of choosing our battles. I believe in the idea of battling when we feel the need to, and knowing that your battle is valid and justified when it comes to the pain that you experience as a Black person. So that's one. And then again, like you were saying, just to reiterate, it's like finding those outlets, finding spaces where you don't feel like you have to confine to the comfort zone of white folks, where you feel like you can really tap into your Black girl magic and your Black boy joy and just be who you are without having to worry about the white gaze or white folks' comfort.
GAZE, just in case you're new to the season.
GAZE.
My friend, she was just like, she said, I just keep hearing him say white gaze, and I just don't. And she's white and she's a lesbian, and she's like, I just can't stop hearing it. I'm sorry. And I'm like, yeah, so, you're right.
right. So basically, the look of white folks, right? Like because it strips us of our autonomy, because we know that like how they experience us can determine whether we live or die in certain situations, literally. And it strips us of our power and agency depending on what the circumstance that we find ourselves in. So I think for Black folks that it's important for us to find spaces where we are able to share amongst ourselves and express ourselves in ways in which we feel like we can't, and when we're among the majority culture. Other tips, Raquel? I mean, what would like?
No, I think that's it. The only thing I would follow up with is that when some people think of picking your battles, that can also be like picking who to educate. I pick my battles with certain things because I find that it's exhausting for me to have to educate everyone. But the way I choose is it something that like I'm over here shaking my leg about, and it's honestly like eating away at my soul. Because sometimes it is just educating people. I had to tell someone recently like, you can't touch my hair. And when I changed my hair this time, she said, oh, I want to touch your hair, but I know I'm not supposed to. And that will stop her from and she didn't get it at first. And I explained to her, I was like, it's the fact that, you know, you would be touching my hair like you touch a child or pets or your property. And that's kind of been the previously conceived notion regarding Black individuals and Black bodies. So I'm not your child, I'm not your property, I'm my own person. You don't get to just touch me. And she said, oh, well, when you put it that way, it's kind of stupid to feel like I can just touch your hair. I said, that's right, girl. And thank you for realizing that. And now she when I changed my hair, she was like, I want to touch it, but I know I can't. I was like, cool. It's progress. Right.
Like I do like what you're saying though, right? Like, cause you're saying like, what you're basically saying is you have to pick and choose where you want to put your energy.
Yeah, because some people, you know the person that's not going to get through to. This was a fellow clinician, a fellow intelligent clinician who grasps concepts. She just doesn't know some things. Versus, you know darn well, you know, so-and-so with that wife beater on who over here just trying to argue or just trying to bait you or troll you. They're not going to get it. Don't waste your time. Like, you know who will actually grasp the concept. Luckily, I'm constantly surrounded by educated people, so I don't feel like it's a waste of time to tell them things because they get it. But I've had those moments where I'm just like, you know what? I'm not going to educate this fool at the 7-Eleven because he's a moron.
Right. Now, I will say, like, I don't think necessarily, like, education is a cure-all for racism.
Oh my God, no, it's not. But I also said, well, she's also a clinician, and I also work closely with her, so I know that some stuff people just don't know.
Right.
And then when I had like a fuzzball in my head the other day, she was like, "So you have something in your hair? Can I take it out?" I said, "Please do. Thank you for asking." But instead of her just going for it, some people just don't know. I just feel like you get I'm more so go off of vibes of people, and most of the time they're right.
But that does make me think of another tip, right? Like, and I think it makes me think of this, like, right, prioritize yourself. Prioritize yourself in terms of where you are directing your energy, who you are educating, and the fight that you choose, right? I don't believe in choosing battles based on the other person's ability to respect the battle that you are choosing. I don't believe in that, because that is oppressive in itself, right? Because it's not so much about what you're being oppressed by as it is trying to prove one's oppression to the other person in a way that they can hear it, and therefore confining your narrative to their liking. But I do believe in the idea of like prioritizing the things that you need for self. And sometimes you might say, you know what, instead of directing this energy at an internet troll, for example, or a colleague or a superior or a subordinate at work, you know, instead of directing it at them, I want to direct it at myself. I want to treat myself to a spa day, or I want to take some time and get away from this person and meditate for a little bit. You know?
Or just sit in your house, because not everybody can do a spa day. I would love to do a spa day, but at this point, Netflix and like a comfy cover is going to be my spa day.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it doesn't always cost money, because I think that's an excuse some people use. Like, oh, I can't treat myself.
Right.
I can't get my nails done. Treat yourself to some silence and some alone time. Treat
Right.
yourself to that. Like, treat yourself to not having to constantly worry about, you know, dealing with your social anxiety, or treat yourself to just living with the best person in the world, which is you. Right. Like, you're awesome. Treat yourself to some alone time with the best person in the room. That's you.
The last tip I'll give is just that, like, I think one of the most amazing things about therapy is that it can be so liberating for marginalized people. It can be so liberating because you learn so much about yourself. And we don't necessarily have the opportunity to do that in every space because environments tell us who we should or should not be, without us even having the opportunity to learn who we would like to be or who we naturally are. And so therapy actually allows you to learn about you and what you want. And I've realized even in my like own therapy that I've become more expressive about certain things that I naturally like. For example, just to kind of like give this comparison, I have a young patient who told me when he was coming to Georgetown, he took off his bomber jacket before he walked on campus because he was like, I'm in Georgetown, I got to be careful of how people are looking at me. And in comparison, I have a jacket. I have a camouflage jacket with the patch Black Boy Joy on it. And
is that the one you brouut today?
It is the one I brought
Yeah,
today.
and you had a scully on. I thought you looked like a straight up thug.
Oh, well, thanks, Raquel.
I said, is that my coat? What the?
Just a black dude and a
missing
jacket and a hat.
man.
And
Yeah.
I got those at the crib.
Yep. See, I'm glad you didn't put that all together because it would have been overload.
Would it have been for who though?
No, it's not overload. LOL, lols. It's a joke. It's a joke. I'm sorry if I don't want you to get arrested on the way to our recording session.
Right,
Shame on me.
Right.
Jesus.
But that's the worry, right? But that is the worry. Like if I like wear clothes that I like, right? Like, and the same for my patient. Like if he wears clothes that he likes to our session or onto the campus, like he's worried about what will happen.
Yeah, and it's cold out. He should wear a bomber jacket, dude.
But also, like you saying, don't wear it because I don't want you to get like
arrested.
Right.
And arrested is the best case scenario.
But then
shot is the worst, which is still a scenario.
But then I also can't freely choose like what to wear. So like I think you like really captured this idea that like our expression of self can come at the cost of our lives. Like, and I'm not talking about like saying things. I'm just talking about like wearing certain things, being in certain places, and looking the way that you look. And I think it's important to actually find ways in which you can push the envelope and or push whatever like boundaries you can. And it will be a push because people are naturally uncomfortable by Black folks. But I think it's important that we actually do things that maybe ain't about the comfort of other people.
Nope.
It's just about what you want to wear.
You gonna be uncomfortable anyway. I might as well rock my Timbs, dog, because you're gonna be uncomfortable anyway. If you gonna call the cops, you gonna call the cops.
And let's say
there is no respectability politics.
Right.
It's not.
Right. And so maybe me not wearing Timbs or my Black Boy Joy patch might make you a little bit more comfortable. But I can't live my life in the terms of like making other people comfortable all of the time. I want to be able to do things that I think express and embody me. So I think it's important for us to be able to find ways where we can kind of take those risks to be ourselves, even when we are somewhat aware of the fact that it is going to make white folks uncomfortable. Because their comfort is not our responsibility.
Nope.
Our comfort is our responsibility.
That's right. It's a good way to end. Thank y'all for tuning in. We're now on iHeartRadio, so tune in there. Website, doing all kinds of things. And we're also going to be at the DC Podfest in November doing a panel on speaking of minorities.
Talking to people that are different from you.
Yes.
And how you approach those conversations and navigate those differences. We are super excited about that. DC Podfest coming up November. We'll be sharing more about it as we learn more details.
Awesome. Y'all have a great one. Thanks for supporting us.
See you next week. Season 2 is off and running. Peace.